Level up your LA Kings experience with the new Vivid Seats Elite Seats. All the on-ice Kings action with even more exclusive access. Enjoy great seats to the game along with premier dining inside the Lexus Club with all-you-can-eat food and non-alcoholic beverages. Plus, get a free Team LA Kings item and parking with your purchase. Score your Vivid Seats Elite Seats tickets today and earn rewards on each purchase from the only ticket company that rewards you for buying. Experience it live with Vivid Seats, the official partner of the LA Kings.
You're listening to an LA Kings podcast. For more episodes of this and every other Kings program, visit lakings.com/podcast.
Turnover, Byfield on it. Moving behind the net, tried to bank it in off, I think, a defender. Loose puck, high slot, Moveraro shot, and he scores!
You're listening to All the Kings Men, the official podcast of the LA Kings.
Kempe moving in with Kopitar. Kempe shoots, scores! Adrian Kempe in overtime!
Now, here's your host, Jesse Cohen.
All right, it is Monday morning, and that means it's time to crown a King of the Week. Joining me to do so, Eric Stevens. How are you doing today, Eric?
I'm well, Jesse. Happy to be with you again. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. You may not know this, Eric, but we skipped an episode of All the King's Men on Thursday because of the fires. It just didn't really feel appropriate when everything was happening. You know, the game had been postponed Wednesday night. We weren't sure what was happening. We thought, well, let's give people a break from having to worry about. Now, maybe we should have, maybe we shouldn't have. I don't know, but we did. So anyway, we're back. We are here to talk about LA Kings hockey. Only 2 games this week. I apologize for giving you a short week, but that game against Calgary on the 8th was postponed. So we've got the win against Winnipeg and the loss in Calgary. Before we get into the King of the Week stuff, I do want to talk about the loss to Calgary because, you know, people texted me and called me today asking me what I thought about it. And my thoughts today are pretty much the same as they were last night, which is it's hard to get upset about one loss on the tail end of a 5-win run, a 6-win run.
Right. Yeah, 5 wins, yeah.
Yeah, second night in a back-to-back road situation. They still only allowed 2 goals to Calgary. I don't feel like they sacrificed their identity. I don't feel like they let go of anything that makes them who they are. You're not going to win them all, and they didn't win that one. But I'm not really concerned about it.
Yeah, you know, you're right. And, you know, I watched the game and, you know, it was one of those where, like I said, it's a back-to-back situation. They had to travel, you know, as well, you know, across a couple of provinces. I mean, I'm sure it wasn't a super long flight, but still, you know, you're traveling
it's a flight
on
at midnight or 1 a.m. or whatever it is.
Yeah, and the way they charged out of the game and had that great first period, you know, it was kind of one of those games where it's like if you didn't put, you know, a team away, then and Calgary seems to be like this team, just kind of a hard working, you know, group, you know, not really real stars on it. Maybe the biggest star, ironically, that they probably have right now is their goalie, you know, Justin Wolf.
Yeah.
Who was very good again, obviously, and really should be right in the thick of that Calder conversation. You know, they hung in the game long enough, and I think you saw in that third period, the back-to-back, the energy that the Kings had kind of expended, you know, in those first 2 periods, really the first half of that game, especially. I think it's it really dropped. Their energy level dropped. It was noticeable there in that third period. And so, you know, maybe the push that they would have been able to make in other games, I don't think they just didn't have that higher gear. And that happens.
Yeah. There was a part of me when I was watching the game, I saw the same thing you did, right? Their legs just looked spent. And there was a part of me that just went, look, call it. Just stop trying. You've got a game on Monday against Edmonton. You know, this one's, I understand it's 2-1, so it's always still just 1 goal away from, you know, maybe you can salvage a point, if not 2 out of it. But man, just call the game, take a breather, you know, save some energy. Because my real concern, Eric, I've been saying, you know, for a few games now on Kings Talk and other platforms, I've been saying, you know, I'm done questioning the coaching staff and the front office, because this team has just been, dynamite ever since that loss to San Jose. But I keep seeing these arguments for where the cracks might form and where they might grow in the future. And the part of me that just defends myself against emotional trauma just looks at the team and goes, yeah, okay, the power play was a concern last night against Calgary. Like the first one, they had 9 shots on goal.
It's been a concern, yeah.
Yeah, they didn't score, but it was that third one, and I get it. The legs were tired. It was the end of the second period, back-to-back on the road, yada, yada. But they gave away a lot of momentum to Calgary. And Calgary had more scoring chances, I think, than they did on that third power play. And you just go like, I don't like that so much. So I'm trying to stay in the positivity and say, like, listen, they're on this incredible run. They won 5 in a row before this one, silly loss. Since the San Jose loss 7-2 back on November 25th, I think they're allowing less than 2 goals a game. I haven't double checked that today, but it was 1.94 going into the Calgary game. I don't think allowing 2 goals in one game would bump that back. It might bump it back up to 2. But anyway, like, they're playing incredible defensively. They have a clear identity, and they're obviously committed to it as a team, and it's actually really impressive. So like I said, I'm trying to dwell in the positive, not the negative. Let's just jump into. You start. Go ahead.
Okay. No. Well, you know what I was going to say, just to tack on to that or whatsoever. Well, one, you got to think back to that San Jose loss. Obviously, something, I don't know necessarily if something was necessarily said. I'm sure there was, but I maybe something that maybe should get more play is what was in those moments. Yeah. What was said? What were things? What was taken to heart? What changed? Because obviously there's kind of a delineating point between that and, like I said, how they played ever since. And then, like you said, the defense, which I think gets kind of gotten undersold is the fact that, that there's obviously all the talk about them playing in a 1-3-1, the positives, the negatives with that and whatsoever, and them switching obviously to, maybe not a total dramatic switch to the 1-2-2, but the fact that they've maintained and in some ways maybe even improved on how they played defensively as a unit, and to be doing all this without their beacon on the back end and Drew Doughty, that's you got to throw some credit, their way. You can nitpick and whatnot and whatsoever, and if they are terrible tomorrow in Edmonton and then a game after that, then you can wonder about the cracks or whatsoever. But yeah, last night it's a loss. That's going to happen.
Certainly nobody should cry for me in the scenario that I'm about to lay out. But before I worked for the Kings, I was a season ticket member. I was a fan for decades. I love this team. I'm unreasonably emotionally attached to how they perform. And so I still exist in these fan spaces. And I want to still participate in the conversations that I used to participate in, but I can't really, one, because I represent the organization now. So anything I say will be, taken with an extra weight and consideration. And if I say something, one time I accidentally said something about the dumb fans up in 300, I meant me, right? Because I used to sit in the 300s. I was referring to people like me, but a fan who sits in the 300s reached out to me and was like, how dare you insult the consumers? 100% correct, right? Like, I just can't say stuff like that. So I'm reading, on these Kings message boards, and I'm seeing people, again, despite the fact that the team has the best points percentage since November 25th, and they're, whatever their record is with the, 11-7, and whatever their record is at home, and there's all these unbelievably positive numbers, and there are still people saying, okay, but the team is dumb for doing this, or the team is dumb for doing that, or this is coaching malfeasance, or whatever. And I want to wade into these conversations and say, listen, I would understand what you were saying if they were struggling, but they're not. So what are you talking about? Like, that's the part that, and like I said, nobody should cry for me for not being able to say that. I can say it here. But
the word fan is short for something else.
100%. And like I said, when if the team ultimately makes the playoffs and loses to Edmonton for a fourth season in the row in the first season, which in the first round of the playoffs, which I do not believe will happen, but if it were to happen, then okay, fine. Go sick. Say whatever you want, and I will just quietly observe. But for right now, in January on the 12th, when there's just very little to complain about, I just don't understand the sort of like, well, okay, it's going great now, but you wait till that other shoe drops. It's like, all right, I'm constantly looking over my shoulder for the shoe to come out of the sky because that's just how I'm wired. But like during the game, I'm just going, yeah, they got this. They're going to win. Like they've just won 5 in a row. What on earth makes me think they're going to lose a low scoring affair? Just, anyway, I don't get it. All right, let's get into King of the Week, Eric. Your honorable mention this week.
Oh, honorable mention. You know what? I would say, well, we're still doing 3 choices, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Okay. So honorable mention. Then I will say, let's go with Adrian Kempe.
Okay.
He obviously had the winner there in in overtime in Winnipeg. 20 goals. He's on a pace. Perhaps if he keeps going like this, I mean. 30 is certainly obviously within reach, and certainly he can squeak, get between 35 and 40. But I just continue to love the player that he's become in all situations. I mean, you think back to obviously when he was drafted and first few years. Remember when he was first, as a center, and that didn't go quite well, and and then he was shifted to wing, and and the fact that now he kind of founded himself and not only embraced that, but I think he's just it just feels like he just keeps getting better and better and better and better. And I mean that's how many players tend to do that. I mean, even some of the best players, they might have those years where they either stay consistent or, maybe even fluctuate, maybe have a down year. I mean, he's right in that prime. And I mean, he's a very good defensive player. I think his defense is very underrated. I don't think anyone really talks about that. He's obviously, he's scoring goals again, to the level he did a couple of years ago. And he's an indispensable player, and he's going to earn some bucks in his next contract.
He was higher up on my list, so I'll just talk about him right now, and we can skip it when it comes to my turn. Yeah, he scored a goal and an assist, 2 points in 2 games, a +1, 7 shots on goal, 21 minutes, 36 seconds of ice time. And he's sort of in that weird stratus of the team where it's like he's been around for a long time, but he's also still quite young. I mean, he's not young, but he's in his prime, I guess you'd argue. His contract is an incredibly valuable contract. And he, that goal he scored in overtime, the winner against Winnipeg, you just go like, okay, well, how many guys on the team can actually do that? There's not that many. Right. And he plays a really important role in that he stabilizes Anze Kopitar. Right? And Kopitar is still, I don't know how he's doing it, Eric. He's chugging along at 37 years old. I'm just under 10 years older than him, and my back hasn't been right for 6 weeks, and I think I'm losing my like I can't even imagine having the kind of physical punishment these guys are thrown at them every night. And but to have somebody who can consistently play with your captain and your best player on the top line, I think is really important. And we've seen for the last, I don't know, however many years, I mean, honestly, really since the start of Anze Kopitar's career, they've struggled to find 2 people to play with him at any one moment in time. Right? I can remember early days in Anze Kopitar's career at the end of the season, it was like, well, we need to find a left winger to play with him and Dustin Brown. Now, it turns out that Dustin Brown needed to shift to the left wing, and then Justin Williams could come in and play on the right, or for a while it was Ryan Smith and Justin Williams. But the point is, they've brought in an endless list of guys to play with Anze Kopitar over the breadth of his career, and it just doesn't stick. Well, Adrian
Not an
Kempe,
easy thing.
no,
Right.
and Adrian Kempe sticks. So I think that is an underrated
Yeah.
talent by itself. So I will go with Adrian Kempe. My honorable mention, however, I have this silly rule. If somebody scores a first goal of the season or a first goal of the career, they get an honorable mention. So I'm giving it to Jacob Muvarari because he scored his first goal of the year, I think second in his career. Listen, I, for a very long time, resisted trying to get to know the players. I thought it would lessen my, my eye. I thought it would soften my my analysis of how they played. So I just resisted getting to
You
know
kind of
them.
wanted
But
to keep an objective line, maybe.
yeah,
Kind of
and I also
sort of
didn't really feel like I belonged in the world. And then also, there are coworkers of yours and mine. Can we call them? We're coworkers, right? We don't work for the same company, but we exist in the same space. And I would listen to certain media members talk about players, and it always felt like, oh, come on, you don't know them. Like, you talk to them for 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there. Like, it always just made me feel icky sometimes. Jacob Muvarari is genuinely a lovely human being. The long way of getting to that point. But like, I was in the locker room before they head out on the road, and I had just watched, I don't know if you're familiar with this film, but Transformers 1 is a cartoon
Yes.
that's sort of meant to reboot the Transformers universe. I don't know why I watched it. I had heard a bunch of people say that it was really, really good. I don't really care about the Transformers at this point in my life, but I was like, all right, well, I've got a couple hours to kill. People say this is a really incredible movie, so I watched it. I went down. Jacob Muvarari and I talk about movies. And so I went and asked him if he'd seen it. And all of a sudden, I'm in a conversation with Jacob Muvarari about Transformers, and he's just like he's just the sweetest, nicest guy. And I'm just like, I'm just saying, like, you don't have to sit here in your locker room in your gross, sweaty gear after practice and talk to me about Transformers movies. Seems to genuinely like it. We've talked about, Halloween came, we talk about horror movies. Christmas comes, we talk about holiday movies. Like, the kid likes movies. I like movies. And I certainly wouldn't say that we're friends, but, when I see him in the hallway, he gives me a little bump. I give him a bump. Like, he's just a really nice kid. The team seems to genuinely love him. Zach Dooley pointed it out on Twitter. When he scores, it's only happened a few times. But when he scores, it does seem to energize the team. And he scored. Unfortunately, it came in a loss, but he also had 2 points out of the 2 games. The only 2 players to do it were Kempe and Muvarari. Also a +1.
But don't you love players where and I've been around, say, long enough, and the whole player press dynamic has changed over the years, no doubt. And this is, I'm not going to go on any kind of rant here or whatsoever. But certainly the ability to build rapport, with them, it's maybe not as, it's certainly not as expensive as it once was.
Yeah.
So it's incredibly refreshing when you're able to do that, and when they're able to even see you beyond, you're just this person coming up to ask me a question or a few or whatsoever, that they sort of even see you, that you're sort of a person that might have some interest that I'm interested in, or just whatever. So. And by the way, and I've not been around Jacob too often, but here and there. But what you say, I firmly believe. He seems like he's just someone that just enjoys life and is loving being in the NHL and loves hockey. I'm sure he would probably feel the same way. If he were back in the with the Ontario Reign and you were talking to him one day, there are just people who are just wired like that.
Yeah, and he's always got a smile on his face, and he's been praised by now multiple coaches and the front office for his patience, because he hasn't really found a spot. I am assuming at this point that even when Drew Doughty comes back, and I guess I could be wrong, but I'm assuming with how well he's played and how well he and Spence combined to play together, my hunch is that he would be claimed if they were to try and sneak him down on waivers again. And so my hunch is they will not. I could be wrong. Time will tell. There's lots of decisions to be made, but that's my honorable mention.
Yeah.
Eric, your runner-up then. Ever wonder what top athletes eat to perform at their best? Superfood Direct, the preferred catering partner of the LA Kings, is here to fuel your game. For athletes, nutrition isn't just fuel, it's the key to peak performance. Superfood Direct delivers chef-prepared meals that help you build strength, boost endurance, and recover faster. With over 11 years of experience, every meal is balanced with the perfect mix of proteins, carbs, and healthy fats to power you on and off the ice. Ready to fuel your greatness? Visit superfd.com/direct and get 20% off your first order with promo code LA20. That's LA20.
Well, you know what? I was going, let's go with a co.
Okay. Were you going to go with Ferrari?
We'll go with a shared. Darcy Kemper and Vladislav Gavrikov.
Okay.
In the sense of, in Gavrikov's case, he's just been doing what he's been doing all year, which I think is, an incredible job. For one, he was going to be obviously a key player for this team, no questions asked. But the fact that he's essentially taken Drew Doughty's spot, he's moved over to the right side, to play on that top pairing with Mikey Anderson. And you just go through, whether it's the advanced metrics, whether it's the eye test, he's passed it with flying colors. I mean, he plays 22 minutes plus on some nights. There have been
he played almost 25 minutes in the last two games. 24 minutes 48 seconds average over the last two games.
How many mistakes has he made? How many mistakes have you seen him make?
Yeah, not many.
And if so, weigh that with how many plays he's broken up on his end. Using that long reach, using that stick. He just seems like he's just playing. I mean, I think he's playing the best hockey of his life. And and in a contract year, why? That's when you want that to happen.
Yeah.
but really, I mean, this team has needed that. They needed, it was going to be sort of an all hands approach anyway without Drew. But the fact that, he stepped into that hole and has given them a great shutdown pairing, is just astounding. And then Darcy, what can you say? We did a piece recently on, the biggest surprises, among each team. And I have Darcy as, my biggest surprise, just in the sense of, obviously how things ended in Washington. I know he was dealing with some injuries last year, but, he doesn't blame it on that. His performance certainly was off what we've seen, in previous, iterations of Darcy Kemper. But the fact that, he came here and, he's at the time of that trade, he was essentially seen as, not a throw-in piece, certainly, but, kind of, this was two teams sort of getting rid of quote unquote problems, that they want to get. And actually, to be fair, it's a trade that's worked out for both teams. The fact that Darcy's, I know he's, obviously been out of the lineup on a couple of occasions. And so you want to be mindful of his health over the second half of the year. But the fact that, who had him tied for third in both save percentage and, goals against average? I mean, really, who foresaw that? I think people foresaw, the Kings maybe helping to rebuild. Say they just, you have to give credit to, Bill Ranford, obviously, and then Mike Buckley, who's come on, and what they do with veteran goalies and how they seem to, kind of get them back on the beam. But there have been occasions too where Darcy had to step up as well, and perform as well. And he's just getting it done. Fact of the matter is he's getting it done.
He's a shining beacon of my I'm done questioning it attitude. Like, there are games where I watch him and I go, I'm not sure how he didn't allow a goal, but he didn't. So, okay, good enough. Like, it's the team's on a run. He's on a run. I had a chance to talk to him just before they left for the road. I requested to talk to him one-on-one off to the side, and I had basically the same question that I had or that has been asked of players like Fogel and Jeannot and Edmondson, the skaters, the new skaters. And the question was like, okay, you've come in here, the coaching staff has put faith in you. Has that helped you? And the answer was like, yeah, absolutely. They roll me out there every other night and, whatever. And so I'm going to try and hit both of the guys you mentioned because Adrian Kempe was my pick there, but I also had Kemper in the mix. Fancy stats are really valuable, but it was sort of astonishing how quickly we reached a point where fancy stats illiteracy has just made using fancy stat vocabulary a way to make the same dumb arguments that anybody ever would have made before fancy stats, right? There's like a really brief window where you go, well, okay, I understand that you're saying that player X is more valuable than player Y, but look, every player Jack Johnson plays with gets caved in when they're on the ice when they're with him, and then as soon as he's not on the ice with them, they improve. And you go, okay, I didn't know that, but that's really valuable information. That like every single guy on the blue line has worse numbers when Jack Johnson's in the lineup, and you're giving up more shots on goal, and that's not great. Or Justin Williams, I think, was neck and neck with Pavel Datsyuk for 5 years in Corsi, whatever. You go like, okay, fantastic. But now in 2025, you get these reports every game, after every game that say like, oh, okay, here's a graph that shows what the analytics, and you go like, no.
Or a game score or something.
Yeah, and you go like, those numbers were never designed to cover 10 minutes of ice time. Those numbers are designed to track 3 years worth of ice time. The entire purpose of the first fancy stat, I think I have this historically correctly, the reason that Corsi was invented is because goals are rare, shots on goal are relatively rare, and Corsi was just a much bigger number. And if you're trying to extract value from the numbers, the bigger the number, the better the value of the number. And so you go, okay, well, shot attempts at the end of the season can range in the thousands, whereas the goals at best are going to be, 50, maybe. We've had a couple guys break 60, a couple guys break 70. I think Gretzky and Hull are the only ones that have broken 80, or maybe McGinley did it. I don't remember, but like 92 is it. That's the top. That's the tippy top. So when Gavrikov, sorry, it's a very long windup. When Gavrikov was traded to the Kings, I was reading this article in The Athletic, no offense to your employer or your coworkers, but it was all about how Gavrikov's numbers didn't support making him a big target for the Kings. And it was like, these are where the numbers are sunken this year for Gavrikov in Columbus. And I remember thinking, those numbers might tell you what happened, again, small sample size, but they don't necessarily tell you why they happened. They don't tell you that the coach doesn't know what he's doing. They don't tell you that the GM is fighting with the coach. They don't tell you that, I don't know if what's happening in Boston.
They tell you the atmosphere of the team at the time.
Right.
Right.
Like whatever's going on right now with Jim Hiller and how he's gotten them to commit to his defensive vision, that's not in the numbers, right? And he's been a head coach for less than one full season. So there's nothing to extrapolate based on those numbers, which again are designed to cover 3. Like when you see those player cards, there's a reason it covers 3 seasons. Like that's what those numbers are. So anyway, Gavrikov, and also I didn't know he played the right side. Right? That also not covered in the numbers. Apparently he did it all the time as a kid. He's come in and he's been so good, Eric, that now the conversation that once existed exclusively in fan spaces has now reached the post-game press conference, which is, well, shoot, what do you do when Drew Doughty comes back? Because they're not going to get that much better defensively when Drew Doughty comes back. They're dynamite defensively. You can only get so good, right? Like you're not going to allow no goals for a full season. It's not going to happen. So that's how good Gavrikov's been. And Kemper, my concern with Kemper was that Talbot was really good last year, but Talbot was on a $1 million contract with a $1 million bonus. Kemper makes more than $5 million a year. You weren't going to get a 500% increase on performance based on the pay increase, but And I don't know for a fact that this is directly related to Kemper's personality or what he does in the locker room, but regardless, they changed the recipe, right? Talbot out, Kemper in,
Right.
along with a lot of other changes. I don't want to say that it was just that. And the new
Yeah.
recipe seems to be working better than the old recipe. So I'm not going to sit there and parse over the receipt and go, well, you paid too much for this ingredient and not enough for that ingredient. Like I said, in the fan space, like when the team's playing well, I'm just done questioning it. They are playing incredibly well. For whatever reason, their personalities mesh, the chemistry meshes, the vibe meshes, the coaching staff has the ear of the team, whatever it is. And Darcy Kemper's part of that. So who am I to
You know
question?
what? I tell you what, real quick, yeah, with Darcy, what got me to at least, first impressions are all, they're first impressions, but they're
Mhm.
meaningful. Um, Early on, remember as they were trying to, kind of figure out the new system, work with it whatsoever. I mean, think of what his numbers will be if you throw out that 8 spot
Yeah.
against Ottawa. Okay. But I remember like the first game of the year in Buffalo. Andre, yeah, they win on, Andre, gets the hat trick. What probably got lost is the fact that how well Darcy played. I mean, and until the Kings kind of got their new system, playing to it, down to, to where it's almost automatic now. It was shaky at the very beginning. There were times when, they were giving up, odd man rushes, left, right, whatsoever. Think back to how many big saves Darcy made then.
Yeah.
He was kind of on top of, other than an outing here and there, he was kind of on top of it right from the get-go.
Yeah, he's had an incredible season. And again, it's one of those things where you look at him in Washington and you don't know why it happened. Right? I don't know what happened last year in Washington. I'm not embedded with the team. I don't pay attention to them. I don't work there. I have no idea what happened. But he's been dynamite for the Kings. All right, that brings us to King of the Week, and I'm gonna have my piece, and then I'll let you have yours. I'm gonna break the rules here because let me back up the intro there. When I invite people on to do this, Eric, I frequently tell them, especially if it's their first time, you don't have to pick a player. You don't have to pick a coach. You don't have to pick a member of the organization if you don't want. If you think, that something out there qualifies, it doesn't even have to be a thing. It can be an abstract concept like the power of friendship
Mhm.
or perseverance or whatever you want. But this week, it's the people fighting the fires in Southern California for King of the Week because I don't know about everybody else. I've been trying to limit my doom scrolling, and limit my just depressing news consumption. And I have discovered something that I'm really fond of, which is footage of planes and helicopters making
Yeah.
those drops onto the
Yeah.
fire areas. And all I can think of is, thank God we live in a world where people decided at some point in their life that that was the path that they wanted to pursue, was to be a pilot,
Mhm.
and a pilot who can do those things, because it's incredibly impressive. It's way better than any of the flying I saw in both of the Top Gun movies. And it's not a path that I personally would have chosen. And it's moments like this where you see, and I don't want to take away from what the people on the ground are doing, because obviously they're in harm's way and they're out there protecting homes and trying to prevent the spread of the fire and trying to protect lives. And that is also a choice that I did not make, right? I didn't decide to become a
Mhm.
firefighter or an astronaut or a ninja or any of the things that you think when you're a kid that you might grow up to be. But in times like this, I'm just grateful that there are people out there that exist who do that, because if it was up to me, it wasn't going to happen. Not that I would turn my back on it, but right, I just chose a totally different path. And you see the incredible bravery and skill and tenacity that these people put into their jobs, and it's really impressive and it's inspiring.
Well, I tell you what, the couple of good calls there. Just a good call on recognizing, our firefighters, for being on the front lines. not only, in the air, on the ground, wherever, mobilizing. And we're talking, I mean, mobilizing now from anywhere, from
Hmm.
throughout the Western United States,
I think
from
Mexico has sent,
Mexico,
yeah.
Canada.
Yep.
Exactly. And good call, by the way, too, on, like you said, the doom scrolling, because even myself, it's kind of that you're or even just the TV coverage, which I think has been exemplary within this, for really almost all of it has been exemplary. But the fact that, but even so, you're watching it, and you're watching and you're feeling for people, and you're mystified, and you're just, you have all these emotions. And then you also have to have to step away a little,
Yeah.
a little bit, and circle back, and just focus on something else. And for your own, maybe just your own kind of inner peace, I guess,
Hmm.
to find. So yeah, that's, for, for King of the Week. Not only that, but on top of, like you said, recognizing all of our great firefighters here, I got to recognize the Kings as well. For one, they were the first team impacted, by this. And I remember early that morning, waking up, and I checked in with, the PR department. This was hours before. And I said, do you guys think you're going to be playing this game here? And as we came to see, a few hours later,
Yeah.
that was obviously the right call. And that we've seen, that teams followed, the Lakers and Rams, and, they moved their games, but teams followed, with this instance. So there was obviously a recognition of the fact that this was not only a devastating event, a tragic event. And in a lot of ways, it's going to be a transformative event.
Hmm.
We don't know what these neighborhoods that have essentially been wiped out are going to look like, a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, whatever. So the Kings, reckon, and the league recognizing that, what, you cannot be playing a game as much as you want to, as much as sports can be a diversion, and sometimes maybe a necessary diversion. You cannot do this.
Yeah.
As it's raging. And then on top of that, the Kings and what they've done, here in mobilizing, efforts for supplies, to collect supplies for people, to, with the relief efforts, there at the Toyota Sports Center facility, that they've, they're really one to kind of jump on this and say, hey, look, what can we do to help here? What can we do, to provide some assistance, for people, who are in times of need. And as we've seen, all people, whether it's Palisades, Malibu, Altadena, areas whatsoever, of all of economic structures are being impacted here. It's not just, folks with money or, whatsoever. There's hardworking people that have lost their homes and, and whatnot. So it's affected everybody.
I do want to talk about the donations, because yesterday I went to Toyota Sports Performance Center to host Kings Talk following the Calgary game. And it was the first day of the donations that they're be doing for 2 weeks, as it's set up as a donation site. And I think I got there at 6:45-ish maybe. And there was just stacks and stacks and stacks of stuff. And I think I saw today on King's social media that they loaded three big trucks and one box truck worth of stuff. We'll be doing that for the next 2 weeks. So just going to say right now, if you want to go to lakings.com/fire relief, you can participate in the donation drive at Toyota Sports Performance Center daily from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Requested items include new toiletry items such as shampoo, conditioner, soap, toothpaste, and brushes, packaged diapers, packaged phone chargers, bottled water, canned or packaged non-perishable food items, pet supplies, and food and usable hockey gear. Maybe less priority on the usable hockey gear in times like these, but nonetheless. And the donation site is a satellite site for the Westchester YMCA. So, all of this is going back to the YMCA, and really good job out of the Kings employees and out of the Kings fans to fill those trucks. So stick taps all the way around, I guess, on that one. Eric, thank you very much for joining me, and I hope to see you soon at Toyota Sports Performance Center.
All right, Jesse, thanks again. I really appreciate it.